Welcome to this edition of the Suitcase Sessions podcast. I'm your host, Bob Bowman. Our guest today is Russ Wellington. Russ lives in the greater St. Louis Metropolitan Area and belongs to the St. Louis Cigar Box Guitar Club. Russ is both a builder and a musician who regularly performs with both the Unspecific Railroad and with Cody and the Chameleons, along with other artists in the area. So, for the next few minutes, let's find a place in the shade, set down our suitcase and our cigar box guitar, and enjoy the show. Okay, Russ, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, how you doing, Bob? Good to see you.
Appreciate it. I know your time's valuable, but I wanted to spend a couple of minutes here up front just getting to know a little bit more about you. So if you would, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure, Bob. I started playing guitar probably somewhere around the age of 10-ish. My brother, who was in the Navy at the time, brought home an old classical guitar and left it there after he returned to the ship. And so it was just laying around the house, and I picked it up and started banging on that thing. And by the time he came back home, he had a few, little basic blues patterns figured out. And so kind of took off from there and played and learned to play guitar and ended up playing bass in a couple of working bands as a teenager and through my early years. And just sort of this I think playing guitar is something that has just never ever left me. It's always been a part of my life, no matter where I've gone, anywhere in my travels. And I'm 65 years old now. No matter where I've gone in my travels, I've always managed to have a guitar by my side. So, that's, it just kind of hangs on you. The music is so therapeutic and helps to get through so many things, if you will.
Yeah, you said that you've traveled, no matter where you've traveled, you've had a guitar with you. And you also mentioned you were in the Navy. Were you able to take a guitar with you on wherever you were stationed? I'm making some assumptions here that I shouldn't. Were you stationed aboard ships or subs or?
I was on a ship out of Pearl Harbor and another one out of San Diego, and yes, always had my guitar with me. So we went to the Far East, Japan, Hong Kong, Korea, Taiwan, So yeah, I always had my guitar with me, I never really took it off of the ship in any of the foreign ports per se, but always out at sea. It was always great to have that guitar to go to just, like I said, it's therapy.
Well, I can appreciate that. We're both sailors at heart. I also served in the Navy. That was a connection we both made early on.
Mm-hmm.
When we first met years ago. But, as I recall, I think I had a 3-inch deep coffin locker underneath my 2-inch or 3-inch mattress. So I'm curious where you stored that guitar.
Yeah.
Space is
So
premium.
I stored it behind the lockers, kind of in between, where the ductwork was. And pretty much no one, I was on a destroyer, so it's not a big ship. A destroyer only holds, I think we had 250, maybe 270 with officers. So not a big ship. So, after everyone knows each other, no one messes with certain things, right?
Yeah.
So it was always just kind of stuffed back behind my rack and into the, next to the vents and stuff. So just an old beat up nylon string guitar. So I've always had one of those, still have one to this day sitting by the side of my chair. And growing up with a classical guitar, there's something about a nylon string guitar that is very comforting, the sound. I've just always hung on to one. They're just, cool to have.
I know before we got started and we hit the record button, you gave me a quick walkthrough around the room, and I think a lot of us share the same, at least, fervor your room displayed. I counted a lot of them, but didn't have a total count. But I know you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 plus guitars in that room, some of which are hanging on the wall behind you. But
Yeah.
So, you say you've always had one, but you apparently collect them too.
Yes, yeah, I have several. I tend to like the old Japanese vintage guitars. Um, Something about early 70s, Japanese guitars that I really like. And yeah, those have always been a favorite of mine. So I have a few of those as well as some basses, guitars, and electric guitars, six-string guitars. Yeah, drums. Yeah, I could go on. I won't. But and then let's not forget cigar box guitars because I mean that's kind of what this is about. But six-string guitars, cigar box guitars can be six strings as well as three and four. A lot of folks are familiar with three and four strings if you follow this stuff at all.
Right.
But yeah, there's six-string guitars, cigar box guitars as well. Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, let me ask you, Russ, where did you first? What was your first introduction to the cigar box guitar? How did you come about finding out about them?
So a friend of mine, Gary Hergert, who sort of heads up the St. Louis Cigar Box Guitar Club, we were going to church together, and I had not met Gary yet, but I was working in the parking lot, and he was assigned parking lot duty also, and so we made a little small talk, and he said that he had heard that I played guitar, and I said, "Oh, do you play guitar?" He said, "No, I build cigar box guitars," and I sort of gave him this look like, who is this guy? Like, what's going on? No, he's like, I'm cigar box guitars. So, yeah, invited me to a club meeting, and the rest was history. I found it was a little bit as a player, being a guitar player, I found that these three and four string instruments, I didn't understand quite what was going on there. They're typically tuned in open tuning, where a guitar is not tuned in open tuning to a full. Open tuning is a full chord. So learning how to play, on those instruments, I was a little bit intimidated in the beginning, and I will share with you, I think a lot of six-string players, just regular guitar players, when they first get a hold of one of these, they're sort of like, it is a little different. So it took me a while to quit showing up at the club with my six-string. I finally quit toting it along with me. The guys would razz me pretty good. What do you do? What'd you bring that for? I'm like, I thought we were playing, So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I can appreciate that in one form, actually, in that Gary's response to you is very similar to the one I would give to you, relative to, no, I don't play, but I build them.
Yeah. And that there's a whole nother subject right there, builders and players, right?
Yeah.
Do some people build and some people play? Yeah, there's builders and there's players and there's guys who build and play.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're one or the other, right?
Well, I remember our first conversation. You and I have talked about it before, but when I first met you, maybe a little over 6 years ago, at the St. Louis Cigar Box Guitar Club meeting, where I met Gary as well. You walked up to me because I was wearing my Navy hat, and so you recognized a fellow shipmate, I think. But at any rate, you said to me, Bob, there's two kind of people in this club. There's woodworkers and nuts and bolts guys. You said, and you told me, you said, and people who have listened to the episode 3 where I talk about how I got interested in cigar box guitar will have heard this story, but you said there's woodworkers and nuts and bolts guys, and woodworkers do great work, but nuts and bolts guys don't necessarily care about all that detail as long as it plays right. and you could perform with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then of course you critique the living daylights out of
Yeah.
my build, which
Yeah.
I still have because there's no way I could let someone else have that non-player,
Right.
what we call a wall hanger.
Yeah.
Mine sits on the floor in a stand, so it isn't on the wall
Right.
necessarily. But
Yeah.
I agree and appreciate that comment.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. All
Yeah.
creative criticism, if you will, right?
Yeah.
If
Likewise, I've made, even though I'm not a player, uh, except for one of them on the wall behind me, I've made all of these from mandolins to ukes to
yeah.
fretless and fretted instruments that other people play and sound really good at because I finally got that string action right. I finally got the intonation piece figured out
Right. Right.
and the scale length. But
Yeah.
anyway, most of that came from that criticism you gave me that
Yeah.
day so many years ago. So
Yeah.
another question I had for you, Russ, is who, if anybody, influences you either as a builder or a player? I certainly want to know about your influences as a player, but do you have any influences for your building,
Uh, um,
or what
so,
inspires you?
oh, man, I think as far as the playing, I think early on I learned as I got acquainted with Cigar Box Guitar guys. Justin Johnson was a regular at our festivals for years, and so naturally I was definitely blown away by this man's expertise. Um, Not only with three strings but four strings. You could give the guy a diddly bow, which is a one string instrument. You could give him a six string. It didn't matter. I think I was definitely inspired by this cat because I thought, you know, this guy is a six string guitar player, but really going to town on these three and four strings and doing it well. Um, so I have to say that he was definitely an influence on me. And I heard when I heard him play, I heard in my head maybe early influences of like maybe I don't know if this is just something I hear or that other people hear, but I heard more like I don't know, kind of like Edgar Winter. It reminded me of Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter flavored stuff, if you will.
Hmm.
Rootsy, Delta blues. I don't know how to say it. Just rootsy Delta blues grit, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just something about that it's just comfortable and soothing, but at the same time can be exciting and terrifying if you want. But he's definitely an influence. And then after that, of course it opened the doors to many um, other three string and four string players, and so many good guys out there. To begin to mention, it is numerous out there. Musical influences, personally, Allman Brothers, definitely an influence on some of my stuff, along with the Winter Brothers and even some Dave Mason and stuff like that. Bo Diddley, of course. But yeah, that's kind of definitely some of my influences for sure.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's fascinating actually because I've heard you play in the past and I certainly hear those influences, but seems like I've heard you play way outside those boundaries too,
Sure,
country and western,
sure.
as well as the blues and what I would consider the classic southern rock genre.
Country for sure.
Yeah.
Country is definitely an early on influence, and that was being played in my household as I was a child, banging around on that nylon string guitar. There was always Roger Miller playing in the background. There was Johnny Cash playing, as well, and it's a flip from country, but as well as Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, you know. So lots of musical influences. And then in early 60s, I had older brothers, so early 60s stuff, Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company, you know, that Cream and, Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, that stuff was, I was raised with all that as well. So, but also learn to appreciate and love intricate jazz music as well as complicated, or I may describe it as orchestrated rock with the roots of Frank Zappa. So I could go on and on, man. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
honestly.
always fun to hear who influences musicians who play the cigar box guitars.
Yeah,
So I'm grateful to hear that kind of background. I'm sure our listeners will be interested in that too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But focusing on the cigar box guitar again, about how many have you made?
Bob, I started numbering my guitars as I started building, and like it's probably been, maybe I've been building 9 years or so. I don't know. I quit. I quit with the numbering. I don't know where, 50 or 60. I don't remember, but I just quit that, and I thought there's no sense in me keeping track of this stuff because I'm not a good keeper tracker of keeping track of stuff guy. It just doesn't matter to me. If I want to build one, I'll build one. If somebody asks me to build one for them, I'll build one for them. If there's a family member that would like one, and they say, hey, could I? Sure. I'll put one together for you too, so, or just sometimes it just, influences by other builders. For sure, when you're building guitars, naturally, when you hang out with guys that are builders, it's pretty easily to be influenced. When you show up and 20 guys show up and they're like, "Hey, check this out," and you're like, "Wow, man, that's pretty cool." You you get ideas from other people's builds, right? Are we stealing ideas from each other? Yeah,
Yeah,
probably,
almost every
probably a
time.
lot.
Yeah,
And it's okay. I
yeah,
mean, but what one guy does, you can look at and go, well, I might do that, but I might do it a little different,
sure.
or with a different type of wood, or a different color, a different size box, different tunings on that thing. It's cool because I think Gary told me in the beginning, he said, Russ, there are no rules. When we build these cigar box guitars, there are really no rules. Well, I mean, there are a few,
Sure, sure.
right? We know that it has to be intonated properly and the scale length has to be proper for it to play right. But, as far as pickups, as far as strings, as tuners, anything goes, man,
Lots of variables.
skillets, bedpans, pandolins, bicycles.
Right.
Bicycles. Some guys have made guitars out of bicycles. Uh,
You mentioned Justin Johnson earlier, and Gary Herget, and I know I was sort of taken aback when I watched Gary deliver a walker that his mother used prior to her passing that he turned
that's
into a
right.
guitar and
That
just
is right.
handed it to Justin Johnson on the stage, who
Yes.
then said, "Oh, you got to give me a minute or two," and about 3 minutes later was cranking out music on a
Yeah.
walker.
Yeah.
So,
Insane.
to
I
your
think he
point,
did one made out of a dryer door.
yes, he
The
did.
door off of an electric dryer. It's endless. The possibilities are endless, which is it sort of starts this craziness. And I think every builder goes through this, that as soon as you start finding out, there's no rules, man, I can make it out of anything I want. You'll be careful walking through a junk store, and be careful walking down the aisles at Lowe's or Home Depot
Right.
because everything is a possibility. You'll find yourself in stores tapping, ding, does that ring? Does that make it right? You're just anything anything could become a guitar. I built guilty as charged.
My wife may be missing a strainer for her canning because I saw the strainer and said it's metal, and I said, "Oh, that would be an outstanding sound hole cover."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, strolling through a Goodwill one time, my wife and I coming back from a vacation. I don't remember where we were. We were coming. I don't even remember where. Somewhere in Missouri, southern Missouri. We stopped at a Goodwill. We stopped and got something to eat. We saw a Goodwill. I said, "Can we just go through?" And so I saw this big metal. I think it was shaped kind of like almost like a horseshoe. And maybe it was a U, supposed to be a U, and it was mounted on a stainless steel rod, and the whole thing was made of stainless steel. Um, and I'm thinking, oh man, and I tapped it, bing, and I thought, she goes, do not tell me you're thinking of a guitar, but, and I'm like, I am, and she tapped it, she goes, it does ring, and I said, bing, I'm like, it's $3, come on. Turn that into a great guitar. Cut the bottom out of it like a U shape. Cut the bottom out. Ran a neck down into it and built some supports onto the sides of the U. Yeah, I think the previous owner of the Roadhouse has that one now. Bill Coons, I think has that, or one of his buddies. It was a connection there somehow. But yeah, so anything you can build a guitar out of anything, Bob. That's the coolest.
Well, I think I love that comment you made about the no rules. So it certainly applies to those examples for sure.
Yeah. Good fun, man.
Well, Russ, one of the things, and I could ask questions all day. I've always enjoyed talking with you, and we could do that for a while. But one of the things I wanted to do having you on here is I've heard you play many times, and was hoping that I could entice you to maybe play something on one of your favorite guitars or one that you like to play a lot so that our audience can hear just what a 3 or 4 string cigar box guitar sounds like in the hands of somebody who isn't just a woodworker, but also a musician.
Yeah, I have a few here. So not all cigar box guitars are made out of cigar boxes, as we talked about. This is an old box that I found somewhere, I don't know, a junk store or something. I think it used to hold, it's very old. It has this dovetail stuff kind of tells that it's old. I think it held jelly jars or something. And it's pretty cool. So inside here, I've taken a metal piece, and I sort of got this idea from Ed Stilley. Don't remember the name of the book that he wrote. You may be familiar with that book. The guy built incredible instruments. He never really played many of them, and some of them were not even playable. But he inspired me to try to find stuff to go into the box that you could tap on it and it would ring. So I have a metal tube here inside the box that when I put this together, I tapped on it and I got a G note, which was beautiful. I'm like, great. So this thing actually has something in it that rings naturally, a G. And it's sort of just floating inside the box, the way I mounted it, with a resonator added. So I can put a little bit of juice to the guitar here.
So Russ, just to keep you from having to say it yourself, you made this box or guitar out of an old jelly jar box, so now you're going to jam on it?
Yeah, that's right. That's good, man. That's good. Let's see. So now this guitar, I mean, I made the neck out of a piece of, I think this is oak. And this is actually number 8. So I was still stamping my guitars then. I've sold most everything else that I've owned. But this one, I just really like it a lot. I think that came off of an old car. I don't know what that is, a B130. I'm not sure. Somebody would know. Some random pickup. This piece came from a junk store. This piece had another piece like a bowl attached to it, and I pulled them apart. because I thought, what a perfect resonator that is, after tearing it apart. There's no frets on this. The action is rather high. So I played this one with a slide, and I made my slides out of an old wine. I have several. I've cut old wine bottles, the tops of them off, and then sanded down the edge. So they work out pretty nice.
That's great.
Yeah, just a little something, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so fretless, and you used a wine bottle slide on your third finger there, and
yeah, wine bottle slide. Everybody has a different, method. I like to keep it there. On some guitars, you're able to actually fret down. Not so much on this one, but I like the ability to be able to use those guys if I need to. So you could change, right? Kind of keeps these fingers free to play fretted positions, if you will.
Right, yeah. Great.
There's one, yeah. I like this guitar.
Nice. That's interesting.
It seems like you always have a favorite, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no one's got this one from me yet. But it could be yours. It could be yours.
I don't know that I've ever seen you play that one, actually.
You may not have. I haven't brought it out for a while. I've got one here. Here's one that I built. So it's we talk about cigar boxes. Man, I got to show you a cigar box one. But I built this out of this is just simply plywood. Had a little extra time, but it's pretty jazzed up. I put a nice tailpiece on it and a nice pickup in it, and I think I don't know. You just experiment. When you start building these things, it's just it's whatever you want to do. So not so much for a slide guitar. And this one I took a little more time on the neck. I do my necks by hand. Mm-hmm. You can also purchase necks that are made from guys that make necks and also from mass-produced necks. And they're all good. It's kind of a matter of preference, really. Yeah, that's a fun guitar.
So I forgot to ask Russ. I don't know that we saw. Was that a 3 or 4 string?
This is a 4-string guitar.
I was
So
going to
yeah, I
say.
should have taken the time to kind of show you. I sort of just get carried away once I start playing sometimes.
Yeah,
I know I lose track of the real world. But yeah, I have a so this is not made out of a cigar box. That is made out of a jelly box or whatever the heck was in there. But I do have one here built out of a cigar box. A gentleman named Darren Dukes made this. He used to own Delta Groove Guitars. I think someone purchased that company from him. He was a fairly successful cigar box guitar builder. If you've never heard the name, look him up. The guy is a phenomenal guitar builder. So look, yeah, the Magneto cigar box. Nothing big, giant, and fancy or anything. It's pretty simple. You know, he makes his own necks, hand sands all of them, makes his own fretboards, and slots all of the frets to put them in there as fret markers. Started experimenting with his own headstock designs. Pretty cool little guitar, man.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a cigar box can do. I mean, turning
Right.
these into instruments, which you've shared with us the history of these things. It's amazing, right? The
Yeah.
music that you can get out of a box and a stick, basically, right?
Yeah. It's never
Good.
a subject I get tired of hearing or talking about.
Yeah,
It
yeah, it's
is
good.
amazing that a box can produce that kind of sound.
It freaks me out. And there's so many. The cool thing with this, man, isn't it awesome that you're probably if you get a guitar from a guy that built one of these, you're probably getting a custom made instrument. Not many guitar players have custom made guitars. Not, I won't say, right? That's sort of a generalization, but they're custom made, man. These guys spend hours on these things. Bob, I don't know. I'm sure we all know there's folks out there that do this for a living, but I know a lot of these guys just do it because it's a labor of love. They love to do it, and man, those are the guitars. Those are the magic guitars
Right.
for a player for sure. You know, I instantly know when I pick one up that I've got. If you have to have that guitar, you know what I mean?
Right.
They kind of talk to you a bit, right?
Yeah.
Sounds crazy, but
No, not at all.
I think it's true. You know, yeah. Some have more magic than others. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing some of the magic that was in all 3 of those builds.
Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
That's fun.
Yes.
So, what are you currently working on, Russ, and where can we expect to find you in the coming months and year?
So, Bob, I just finished a build that it can be seen. I don't have it here with me. We just took it down to Gadsden, Alabama, to the Mary G. Hardin Cultural Arts Museum down there. I'm involved with some folks, with Michael Breedlove of MGB Guitars, um, who, by the way, is a guitar parts supplier. So you could get all of your strings and your tuners and your pickups and necks, even whole guitars. It's endless supply of for guys like us that are in this building cigar box guitars. He has sponsored this event in Gadsden, so it'll be a permanent display. I believe it's going to be 5 years. It's a 5 years permanent display, I think, in Gadsden. So I just finished a guitar that went in there. We went and set up the museum a couple of weeks ago. We're going to be back there in June to play some music with Cody and the Chameleons, Travis Bolin, Mark LeClaire and the St. Louis Mafia, also the Full Circle Redux band. So that's some of the stuff on the agenda. And then we come back. When we come back from Alabama, we have another event at the St. Louis Cigar Box Guitar Festival, which would be the second weekend in June, I believe. So we'll be there again with Cody and the Chameleons, we perform as a 5-piece band. Not all of our instruments are necessarily cigar box guitars, but I will say that we do play some cigar box guitars during our performance. A bass that's made out of a Pepsi crate. My go-to stand-up bass that Michael Breedlove made from MGB Guitars. Fantastic guitar. Mark LeClaire has a big lineup of guitars that he always brings to our events, and he's sort of our designated cigar box guitar guy, in the show. So we're a 5-piece band. We have drums, Cody Goggin on guitar, a guy on saxophone, myself on bass guitar, and then Mark doing his thing with his cigar box guitars. So great fun, man. We have a good time with it. Yeah, so that's kind of what I got cooking right now. Keeping our eyes on other things right now. I think we have some music coming up in downtown Washington at the end of June. Sunset on the River for the folks down there in Washington. And I think we also have a benefit I don't know the date on that one, but there's a benefit coming up in Washington to raise some money for the veterans down there in Washington. So we just keep on going and having a good time with this, man. Playing and singing and bringing the music, building the guitars. It's all good fun, man.
So it sounds like whether you're in Gadsden, Alabama, the weekend of June 7th and 8th, or in St. Louis at the Cigar Box Guitar Club Festival on the 14th, or in Washington, Missouri at a Veterans Hall, you can find you playing with either of those bands at any of those.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, great. Well, where can we go to connect with you personally? And I know you mentioned that you build, and you also pointed out that you play a lot, but you do build. Is there a way to connect with you if somebody wanted to?
Sure. You can go to Skip and Chatter. It's SKIP with the letter N. It's all together, Skip and Chatter. And that's on Facebook. You can just go Skip and Chatter at Facebook. And that name, by the way, is that is a name I feel like I have to share this with you. It's sort of a terms of endearment. My father used to refer to me as when I was a child. He used to call me, "Hey Skip." That was my nickname, "Hey Skip." And my younger brother, 2 years younger than I, Ron is his name. He used to call him Chatter. There was a program back then back then. I mean, my gosh, you know, early '60s. Cartoons were not. They were the old school cartoons, but this show was a children's show, very basic show. It had a chimpanzee named Chatter, and there was a guy named Skipper, and it was sort of like a stage prop setup with Skipper in the boat, and then Chatter was this monkey. So we became Skip and Chatter, growing up. So I thought, well, if I ever do anything that has any impact, or I don't know, just terms of endearment, it's like, I love my brother, and then we'll always have that memory of my dad, plus the good times, growing up as a child. So Skip and Chatter, that's it. So my logo looks, if you see my logo, it looks like there's a monkey smoking a cigar and he's got a hat on, and that's kind of where that comes from. So, but yeah, you can find me there, or just email at russwell.w@gmail.com.
Well, that's perfect. And I'll make sure that we include both of those in the show notes, Russ, so people can do that if they want to.
Sure.
And I just want to close by saying it's been fun, as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
I don't think
Absolutely.
I've ever sat down with you. I didn't learn something new. I certainly did today, and it's been a fun time. Thanks for playing all three of your builds for us.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a good place to close. We'll close that this episode out now.
Okay.
And I'll just say thanks for joining me on this episode of the Suitcase Sessions.
Absolutely.
If you're enjoying the show, why not hit the subscribe button and follow us each week as we continue to explore the world of cigar box guitars. Until then, remember, there are no rules. Just keep playing, and we'll catch up later somewhere down the road.